If you've ever felt like your workout routine works perfectly for 2 weeks and then completely falls apart when your period symptoms hit, you are not broken. You just need an approach that actually works with your cycle and not against it. 10 years ago, when I first tried to build muscle and stay consistent with workouts, I thought the key was progressive overload and a really solid training split. You know, hitting the gym, lifting heavier each week, resting 1 or 2 days, rinse and repeat. And technically, that works if your body isn't going through hormonal hell for half of the month. But after years of battling fatigue, bloating, cramps, and all of the things, and now coaching hundreds of women through the same thing, there's a lot I wish I knew before I ever started following a traditional training program. So if you feel like you can't stick to a routine because your symptoms are hijacking your body every couple of weeks, I'm gonna walk you through everything I've learned the hard way so that you can stop feeling broken and finally start seeing results that will last. And let's start with the first thing, because nobody talks about this. Lesson 1 is that most plans are not built for women with symptoms. If you have an irregular cycle or one that comes with many symptoms, this video is for you. A whopping 80% of women deal with hormonal imbalances and debilitating symptoms at some point in their cycle. So if that's you, you might need a different approach. What's wild is there's all this new research saying you can build muscle throughout your cycle. And sure, that's true, but that's not necessarily helpful. It's not even about struggling with whether or not we can lift or build muscle. We're struggling with how to even function for half of the month when we feel like we're literally dragging around a sandbag body for half of it. I'm sorry, but hip thrusting double your body weight just ain't possible when you can't even stand up without debilitating cramps. I personally have experienced not 1, not 2, but 3 ovarian cysts that grew and ruptured. So running, deep core exercises, and heavy lifting were simply off of the table solely due to the pain of the cyst. So yeah, traditional strength training programs don't really account for that and most of women's health issues. Lesson 2 is understanding the variables of progress. From my experience, it's not the rigid training programs that helped. It was understanding how to manipulate all of the variables of progressive overload. It's not just lift heavier or you failed. There are actually so many ways to make progress. Yes, lifting heavier as often as you can is one of them, but here's a couple of other ones that you should keep in mind. Doing more reps. For example, last week you might have done 8 reps, but this week you can do 10 reps with that same weight, and that's still progressive overload. You can also increase total volume or number of sets. Maybe last week you did 3 sets, but this week you did 4 sets. Adjusting rest time. Going from a 3-minute rest to a 1-minute rest and maintaining the same volume is another way to see progressive overload. You can also slow down your tempo. You can increase your time under tension, especially in that eccentric phase. You can add pauses or pulses. You can improve your range of motion, and you can even shorten the transitions in between each exercise and still see progress. I'm telling you, everything got so much easier when I realized I could essentially choose from that list depending on how I felt that week. Is following a structured program still important? Yes, absolutely. But adjusting your workouts for a week or 2 of your cycle using the variables above is one way that you can keep making progress without changing your whole routine around. So now, if I'm ovulating and I feel powerful, I'm gonna push my weight and I'm gonna cut my rest. But if I'm bloated, cramping, and mentally exhausted from my luteal phase, I'm gonna go lighter, slower. I'm gonna go focus on that form, and that still counts as progressive overload. For example, if I were to put in a hip thrust and structure that throughout my cycle, this is an example of what it could look like. During the first week of menstruation, I'm gonna wait for day 3 when my cramps are less intense. If my cramps are still prevalent, I'm either gonna lift a lighter weight, slow down that tempo, or I'm gonna adjust that for like a dumbbell glute bridge. When I'm in my follicular phase and my cramps are gone, I'm gonna have so much energy. I'm gonna hip thrust that thing with 200 plus pounds, 5 sets, 6 to 8 reps, 1 to 2 minutes of rest between each set. I'm gonna feel amazing. Ovulation up next, I'm still gonna feel awesome, so I'm gonna continue with that same training approach. Then it's gonna flip. I'm going to be in my luteal phase. I'm going to feel crampy, going to have to adjust back down to that lighter weight. I'm going to do a little bit more reps, focus on a slow eccentric phase, maybe even add a pulse at the top. But if I'm feeling gravy through that luteal phase, I'm going to be lifting that heavy weight the same way I just did in my follicular and ovulation. Okay? I'm just curious, what phase for you is the hardest? Let me know in the comments below. My third lesson is that my cycle is not predictable, so my training can't be either. I'm not sure how many of you can relate to this, but there's weeks where I feel amazing. Like I am energized, I am strong, I am locked in, and then bang, suddenly there are weeks where I feel heavy, sore, I'm emotionally wiped. And I used to think that this made me inconsistent and weak, but I now realize it wasn't inconsistency, it was my biology. Pretty much my PCOS, ovarian cyst, and potentially endometriosis, but that's a story for a different day. So now I plan my training with those fluctuations in mind. I expect the dips, I adjust the plan, I show up anyway, but a little bit differently. And that's how I finally stopped starting over every couple of weeks. But here's where 90% of women get it completely wrong, which brings me into lesson 4, scaling without burning out. So what do you do when you actually feel like crap? Here is what I do. If I am cramping badly, I'm going to cut the intensity or change the exercise altogether. For example, running triggers debilitating pelvic pain for me about 1 to 2 weeks before my period. When that happens, I will switch to something a little less jarring like the rower or the ski erg. If I feel inflamed or foggy, I keep the workout structure the same, but I'm gonna lower the weight, I'm gonna slow down my tempo, and the goal here is to move intentionally without pushing into burnout. If I'm in my follicular phase, I'm gonna go for it. Heavy lifts, shorter rest, more volume. This is definitely the time to push. But again, if I'm bloated, I'm moody, I'm in my luteal, I'm gonna lean into those slower reps, the longer rest periods, and I'm gonna give myself a little bit more space to breathe in between each set. The key here is not perfection. The key is consistency. I'm not skipping, I'm just adjusting. And that's what builds long-term results, not some flawless 7-day split on repeat. And research is gonna back this up too. In fact, studies show that many women may feel like their performance drops, but their actual output stays the same. Now, this might be due to lower serotonin during the luteal phase when estrogen drops, and that can make everything feel harder even if you're still performing at the same level, which is another reason why it's still so important to keep showing up. This could be why last week felt effortless and this week feels like a slog. That said, it does matter how you train when you are feeling off, because if you are tired or inflamed, your risk of injury could increase, especially if your form starts to break down. So maybe last week you crushed 205 for 4 reps on your back squat, but this week maybe you go 150 for 12 reps with slower tempo and good form. You're still winning and you're still building. Lesson 5 is why most women stay stuck. I see this all of the time. Women will follow a rigid plan that they found online, one that does not consider their hormones or energy fluctuations, and they just try to force their way through low energy phases like PMS. They end up feeling wrecked, discouraged, and inflamed. Or they stop training completely for 10 to 14 days, they wait until their period passes, and then they're gonna start all over again. That cycle of push, crash, quit, repeat is exactly what keeps most women stuck. It's not that you're not trying hard enough, it's that the plan was never built for your real life. So let's zoom out for a second because I'm gonna show you something interesting. A systematic review of 19 studies found a strong connection between menstrual cycle issues like irregular periods, PMS, and painful cramps, and poor sleep quality. 16 of those studies showed a positive correlation, meaning poor sleep makes cycle symptoms worse and cycle symptoms make sleep worse. And since we know that sleep is a key part of recovery, of strength, and muscle growth, you can probably guess what happens next. If your sleep is disrupted, your workouts are going to suffer, your recovery is going to slow, and your progress is going to stall. It's not just in your head, it's physiological. Hormonal imbalances like this, they don't just cause mood swings or tender breasts. They also affect how well you perform, how quickly you can recover, and how consistent you can stay with your workout routine without burning out. Even women with regular cycles can experience these symptoms, but they're usually a little bit more pronounced and intense in women with irregular cycles. So if you feel like you're getting knocked off of your game right before your period, that is real, and your plan should absolutely adjust for that. Those variables mentioned before, like intensity, volume, rest, tempo, they are your bestie in your fitness journey. Use them. Because forcing your way through is definitely not the answer, adapting is. Lesson 6 is that you are not weak for needing adjustments. Next up is the biggest mindset shift that changed everything for me and my clients, and this is what nobody tells you. Feeling tired, puffy, hungry, or emotional before your period is not normal, but it's extremely common in over 80% of women, and ignoring that just leads to burnout or resentment. This study actually showed performance decreases in endurance athletes in the mid-luteal phase, likely due to elevated body temperature. So if a run one day feels easy and the next day you just can't catch your breath, give yourself a break. Real strength is knowing when to go hard and when to pull back, and doing both without guilt. Lesson 7 is my system for results that last. So here's the system I use, and this is what I coach my clients through. First things first is knowing where you are in your cycle and tracking your symptoms, not just your bleed days. When are you bloated? When are you tired? How tired? How is your sleep? And when is it disturbed? I track my symptoms daily, and it has made a world of a difference. I know exactly what phase I am in, and how to adjust my training and my nutrition accordingly. Secondly is planning ahead for those lower energy weeks instead of being caught off guard. This one's plain and simple. Thirdly is adjusting your progressive overload to match your energy and not shame yourself for skipping. Use the principles in this chart and mentioned before to keep progressing without necessarily lifting heavier or with more intensity. Fourthly is building a flexible framework with deload weeks, light movement days, and recovery built in. I like to group my training in 8 to 12 week bursts. After each phase, I will schedule in time to rest and recover so that I can come back feeling refreshed and ready to kick butt. Back in 2018, I experienced the worst season of depression and overtraining. I had the worst symptoms from weight gain to acne. I learned that overtraining and skipping your rest days and recovery weeks is one of the worst things you can do, and is doing the complete opposite of what you're trying to do. And fifthly is sticking with this long enough to see your body and your hormones change, because they will. It will take longer than 3 weeks to see results. In fact, it could take 3 years to see results. And that's why it's important to be in it for the long game, adjust your expectations, and just fall in love with the process and not the results. If you'd like to view more information about this chart and how to use it, you can find it in the Muscle Meets Menstrual workbook. You can grab your guide using the link in the description. Lesson 8. This is what I would tell you if you are still struggling. If I could go back and save myself years of inconsistency, guilt, and confusion, I would stop following random plans made for men or symptom-free women. I would stop listening to fitness influencers saying things like just push through or no excuses. Because when I finally built a training plan around my hormones and my body, everything changed. I started seeing real progress, not just in strength and in body composition, but in my mood, my energy, and my ability to stay consistent all cycle long. So if you're stuck in a cycle of quitting, pushing too hard, or feeling like your body is working against you, you don't need another random plan. All you need is a system that's built for your biology. That's why I created my period-friendly strength framework, Muscle Meets Menstrual, to help women like you finally get results without wrecking your hormones. You can grab your copy using the link below. And if you want to learn more about how I teach my clients to align their workouts with their cycle to keep seeing results, just tap the link below. It doesn't hurt to take a look. Thank you so much for listening. Please comment, share, and subscribe for more, and I will see you in the next one.